Hi guys, I'm Ruslan. Let's get into this shocking story right now.
I work nights in a county emergency department, which means my life is made of beeps and coffee and strangers who call me sweetheart while bleeding on my shoes. On a Tuesday that had the bad smell of a Monday, we took in a woman from an apartment fire. Smoke inhalation, confused, barely speaking. I scanned her wristband, pulled up her chart, and read the line that organizes the chaos. Primary emergency contact, spouse, Eli Harper, 55501 for 6721. Eli Harper is my husband. For a second the screen blurred, and I thought it was the fogging of my face shield. I blinked. The letters stayed. A nurse learns to compartmentalize. We build drawers for everything. I closed the drawer labeled marriage and opened the one labeled airway. We put oxygen on her, started a line, drew blood gases. She kept trying to take the mask off with the slow insistence of someone who has bargained with air before. When she finally settled, the doctor said, "Call the spouse." I stepped into the hallway with my phone, looked at our ceiling tiles like they might vote, and dialed my husband from my work phone as if I were a stranger delivering a stranger's news. "Mr. Harper," I said when he picked up. His voice dropped into a register I only hear when bad things have momentum. "Who is this?" "County Ed," I said. "We have a patient." I said her name. Silence, and then the kind of exhale that reshapes a room. "Is she alive?" "She is," I said. "She asked for you." He didn't ask why my voice was the messenger. He didn't ask how his name was on a chart where mine used to live. He said, "I'm coming," and hung up. I stood with the dial tone pressing against my ear like a coin and felt the drawer labeled marriage kick from the inside. He arrived 20 minutes later, hair damp, wearing the sweatshirt he keeps in his truck for emergencies that aren't ours. He didn't look at me first. He looked at the bed, at the woman under the oxygen mask, at the way her breath argued with the plastic. He said her name like a person calling home. She opened her eyes, found him, and softened into the pillow like a negotiation resolved. I wanted to be the version of myself with infinite professionalism and zero curiosity. I wanted to be a nurse who reads charts and not a wife who reads handwriting. Instead, I stood there with a chart that said spouse and a marriage that said permission and tried not to tip. When she slept, he stepped into the hall and finally looked at me. "We have been married 8 years. We own a couch and a drawer full of mismatched takeout forks. We have survived cupboards and funerals and the year we both forgot how to talk." "Nay," he said. "I can explain. Start with the word spouse," I said, "because sometimes you am right for the artery." He put his hands on his hips like a firefighter at a scene he didn't set. "She has no one," he said. "Her mom died. Her brother's in another state and half a decade into a grudge. Her lease says no overnight guests and her landlord doesn't answer numbers he doesn't recognize. When she got sick the first time, the nurse asked who could sign. I wrote my name. Partner didn't move the computer. Spouse did. What sickness? I asked, and heard the wobble I'd hoped to hide. Lymphoma, he said. Remission. Then maybe not. She didn't tell me until it was already loud. How long have you been her spouse? I tasted the word like it might break my teeth. On paper, a year, he said. In the way that means groceries and doctors and making sure someone's there when the chemo chair reclines. 14 months. I tried to put the math on a calendar and realized I recognized the blocks. The Tuesdays he taught a late class. The Saturdays he helped a neighbor move. The weeks he came home smelling like antiseptic instead of sawdust and said the hardware store had started stocking a new kind of cleaner. I had believed him because marriage is a religion built on the liturgy of benefit of the doubt. "What did you tell me you were doing while you were doing this?" I asked. "Good things," he said. So quietly I almost forgave him, just not the true ones. He said she was his ex. He said they were 19 and stupid and thought love was a sport with points. He said they stopped being we before mortgages were vocabulary. He said when she called after the diagnosis, he told himself he could be decent without being dishonest. He said he was wrong and right in unhelpful proportions. "I never slept with her," he added. as if the body were the only instrument a betrayal could use. I laughed once in the hallway and a passing resident looked up like humor might be contagious. "That's not the door you walked through," I said. "You don't have to defend it." He leaned against the wall and slid down until he was sitting on the scuffed baseboard, a pose I have seen him use when plumbing fights back. "I put my name where I knew it would make things move," he said. "I didn't ask you because I wanted to keep your goodness from getting requisitioned for something you didn't sign up for. You requisitioned my husband instead," I said. He nodded. "I did. I'm sorry." When the attending asked for the contact to sign consent for a chest CT, the clerk looked at me out of reflex. I pointed at Eli. The pen hovered over the signature line with the concentration of a person choosing a future. He signed. The CT was clear enough to give us the relief that lasts until the next scan. In the morning, I went home and made a list because that is how I make a life heavier than I am feel like it can be lifted. What I knew, what I feared, what I could verify. I knew my husband had been someone's emergency contact for a year. I feared I had been sleeping next to a man who had built a second address inside himself and hung a sign on it that said triage. I could verify pharmacy pickups, credit card charges, mileage, hospital cafeteria receipts. I did none of those things. I went to sleep on the part of the bed that was not on fire. That afternoon, he put his truck keys on the counter between us like an offering and said, "Ask me anything. Why didn't you tell me the day your phone started ringing again with that name?" I asked. "Because I thought I could be brave without inconveniencing you," he said. "Because I thought goodness doesn't need an audience." "What did you need from me that you decided not to need?" "Permission to be a complicated man," he said. "Did I make you feel like you had to be simple?" He laughed, but it sounded like crying. "No, I did." We talked like people with a fuse burning toward their conversation. He told me about infusion rooms and the way disinfectant has different notes in the morning and at night. He told me about how she kept a list on her fridge called Dumb Joy, and every chemo day they crossed something off. Good donuts. YouTube of dogs failing at stairs. The old Muppet sketches with the grumpy men in the balcony. He told me about the first time he wrote spouse in a blank field because friend kept breaking the system. And the nurse whispered, "Thank you. It's easier for us this way." And he let that sentence be absolution instead of what it was, logistics. "And you?" he asked, not as a trap but because my face is honest when I wish it weren't. "What did you do with the space where I wasn't?" "I American Girl dolled you," I said, and he smiled despite himself. "I sat you in the chair in my mind, where a husband belongs, and moved you around in pretend. I told myself we were fine because my imaginary you kept asking about my day. We told the truth until it was noon again." He called her brother. I called our counselor. He called the landlord of the building that burned and asked about deposits and temporary housing. I called the social worker attached to her oncology team and learned that the word spouse works because insurance loves categories more than people. When she discharged, we set up a bed in a friend's spare room because her apartment smelled like ghosts. Eli visited during hours I knew about. I visited during hours that didn't make a soap opera out of the situation. Sometimes we were both there, drinking the kind of tea that pretends feelings are soluble. She was funny in a way survival forces you to be. She teased him about his dad jeans. She teased me about how I label every jar in my pantry like the beans might lie if not supervised. She apologized for putting a wedge where the dishes already knew the fault lines. I apologized for making a human being into an indictment. You cannot heal a triangle with apologies, but you can take the corners down to something less likely to puncture. When a follow-up scan whispered the word remission loud enough for Hope to hear, we bought cupcakes the size of bad decisions and ate them at her new kitchen table. She said she would take Eli's name off the chart and make her brother sign. She said she would put me down as the second contact if I didn't mind, and I laughed until I cried because life is the thief of genres. At home, Eli put a form on the table. Advanced directive. He wrote my name in the box next to primary and then looked at me, pen hovering above secondary. "Who do you want there?" I asked. He wrote May's sister and then put the pen down like a weapon surrendered. No more secrets with paperwork, he said. We made rules, unsexy and brilliant. No lies of omission dressed as mercy. If we are going to be kind to anyone in ways that alter calendars or bank statements or the story we tell about ourselves, we say it out loud first. We decided that if a field on a form refused to fit who we are, we would argue with a person instead of lying to a computer. We promised to let each other be complicated at home, so neither of us would feel compelled to build a simple self somewhere else. Months later, she brought a plant to our porch with a bough that was trying too hard. We put it in the kitchen where the sunlight is kind to liars and let it learn what our house smells like. Eli still gets texts from her that say things like "scan clean and tired of soup" and "is it normal to feel like I stole a life back from a very polite thief?" He shows me every one. Sometimes I answer. Sometimes I don't. This is what trust looks like when it's convalescing. It asks for small favors and says please. Every time I open a chart now and see spouse next to a person who is not wearing a ring, I think about how language is a door we force when the hallway is burning. I think about how the word betrayed me not because it was false but because it was weaponized by a system that prefers tidy nouns. I choose partner in the field if I can. I tell registration they can find a way. Most days they try. If you ask me, in the fluorescent quiet between traumas, what betrayal is, I would tell you it is not always a body where it shouldn't be. Sometimes it is a signature in the right place for the wrong reason. Sometimes it is kindness done in costume because goodness rarely has the right badge for the forms. But I would tell you something else. The antidote wasn't punishment. It was transparency measured in teaspoons and poured into every container that used to hold assumption. I still check wristbands twice before I scan. I still drink coffee like it's a task. I still go home at 7 a.m. to a man who will always want to fix the part of the world within reach of his hands. I married that person. I didn't sign a form saying he would make sense. So tell me in the comments, if someone wrote spouse where friend would have been enough to make the world kinder to a sick person, is that an unforgivable lie or a forgivable misuse of a word? And which would hurt you more, the paperwork you weren't told about, or discovering you've been protected from the very thing you agreed to carry together?